Once upon a time, there lived a king. I do not know his name, nor do I know which land he ruled. I only know that he had no son, and his only daughter was always sick. The doctors could not cure the princess, but they also told the king that she would be saved if she ate a healing apple. The king ordered that a proclamation be made throughout his kingdom, saying that whoever could bring him a healing apple that would cure his daughter would be allowed to marry her and later become king. This news reached a farmer who had 3 sons. He said to his eldest son, "Go to the orchard, pick a basket of those beautiful red apples, and take them to the palace. Maybe the king's daughter will recover after eating them, and you will become her husband and inherit the throne." The young man obeyed his father and set off with a basket of apples. He had not gone far when he met a dwarf. The dwarf asked him what he carried in the basket. "Hell," the farmer's eldest son answered. "Frog legs." The dwarf said, "Frog legs they shall be." Hell continued on to the palace and said that he had brought apples that would cure the princess. The king was pleased and allowed him to enter the court. But when he opened the basket, instead of apples, it was filled with frog legs. The king became very angry and ordered him to be thrown out of the palace. When the boy returned home, he explained everything to his father. Then the father sent his second son, Seem, with another basket of apples. Once again, the dwarf appeared and asked him what he carried in the basket. Seem replied, "Thistle seeds." The dwarf said, "Thistle seeds they shall be." When Seem reached the palace and claimed to have brought healing apples, the king refused to let him in, saying someone had already mocked them. But Seem insisted until they finally allowed him to present the basket. As soon as he opened it, it contained nothing but thistle seeds. The king was greatly offended and ordered that Seem be driven out with lashes. He returned home and told everyone what had happened. Now it was the turn of the third son, whom everyone called Jack the Fool. Jack asked his father whether he could take a basket of apples to the palace. The father said, "What are you going to do? When the clever ones have gone and returned empty-handed, you won't accomplish anything." The third son did not accept his father's words and insisted. "Even so, I must go," the father said. "Go away, foolish boy. You are not ready for such things." Jack tugged at his father's clothing and said, "Father, I am going anyway." The father answered mockingly, "Fine, if you want to go, go. But know this, you will also return empty-handed." Jack was filled with joy simply because he had been allowed to go. When night came, he could hardly sleep from excitement. He slept only a little, and in that short sleep, he dreamed of a beautiful girl in the royal palace, covered in jewels from head to toe. Jack set out early in the morning. Soon he met the dwarf. The dwarf asked what he carried in the basket. Jack answered, "Apples, apples that the king's daughter will eat and be healed." The dwarf said, "Apples they shall remain." When Jack reached the palace, they would not allow him to enter. They said that 2 men had already come claiming to have apples, but one basket had frog legs and the other had thistle seeds. Jack insisted, saying his basket contained no frog legs or thistle seeds, but the finest apples in the whole kingdom. The guards sensed that he was telling the truth and allowed him to enter. And when he opened the basket, apples shining like gold spilled out. The king happily took some apples to his daughter. She ate them, and soon she herself came running. Fully healed, the king was overjoyed. But the king broke his promise and said that the young man must first build a boat that could travel better on land than on water. Jack accepted and returned home. The father sent Hell to the forest to build the boat. The dwarf appeared and asked what he was building. Hell answered, "A wooden bowl." The dwarf replied, "A wooden bowl it shall be." At night, when Hell tried to use the boat, it turned into a wooden bowl. The next day Seem tried, and the same thing happened. On the third day Jack went. He worked hard, singing and whistling as he worked. At midday, the dwarf appeared and asked what he was making. Jack replied, "I intend to build a boat that travels better on land than on water, so that I may marry the king's daughter." The dwarf said, "A boat it shall be." By evening, the boat and all its parts were ready. Jack rowed it swiftly toward the palace. The king saw him coming from afar, but again refused to let him marry his daughter. He said that Jack must now watch 100 rabbits from dawn to dusk, and if even one escaped, he would not be allowed to marry her. Jack accepted. The next day he took the rabbits to a field and watched them carefully. After a while, a servant came and demanded 1 rabbit, saying that guests had arrived at the palace. Jack refused. The servant grew angry. Jack said, "If the princess herself comes, I will give her one." When the princess came, Jack placed a rabbit in her apron. After she had walked about 100 steps away, Jack blew the whistle, and the rabbit leapt from her apron and returned to the others. When night fell, Jack blew the whistle to make sure they were all together, and then brought the rabbits back to the palace. The king was astonished that none had escaped, but again he refused and placed another condition. Jack must bring him a feather from the tail of the old griffin. Jack set out and that night reached a castle. Since there were no inns in those days, he asked the owner to let him stay. The owner welcomed him and asked where he was going. Jack replied that he was going to the old griffin. The owner said, "Ah, the old griffin. They say he knows everything. I have lost the key to my money chest. Please ask him where it is." Jack agreed. The next day he continued and reached another castle. There they said that one of their daughters was sick and no medicine worked. They asked Jack to ask the griffin for a cure. Jack agreed. Then he reached a lake where a tall man carried people across on his shoulders. The man asked Jack where he was going. Jack said, "I am going to the old griffin." When Jack returned to the king with all of this, the king asked where he had gotten everything. Jack said, "The old griffin gives riches to anyone who goes to him." The king immediately set out. When he reached the lake, the tall man carried him to the middle and left him there, and the king drowned.